назвать с русского языка, на русском. Первая половина или первый кусочек вступления будет на русском языке. И это не проповедь будет, это будет эксперимент. Мне нужны 2 человека. Выйдите, пожалуйста, кто-нибудь, маленькие, большие, средние. Вы скажете 1 или 2 слова. Так что 2 человека, пожалуйста, выйдите, кто хочет. Не стесняйтесь. Давай, выходи. Да, выходи. Сергей, выходи. А если никто не хочет, я вызову просто. Ну, здесь можешь встать. Микрофон возьми, пожалуйста. Сергей, тоже возьми микрофон. Может быть, вы это знаете, может, нет, но я покажу вам 2 листочка бумаги, да, и ты просто скажи, какая из них больше. Какая из них кажется больше?
Кажется.
Кажется больше, да, тебе. Кажется, красная больше, да? С этой стороны, да? Красная. Ага. А вот тебе вот из этих 2 какая кажется больше?
Красная.
Красная?
Нет, красная.
Красная, хорошо. Еще раз. Еще раз посмотри, какая?
Одинаково.
А как кажется?
Кажется, синяя.
Еще раз посмотри получше.
Какая больше?
Ага.
Красная.
Красная больше?
Ой, синяя.
Синяя больше? Хорошо. Ты смотри. Они одинаковые. Видишь? Какая кажется больше? Они одинаковые. Одинаковые. Хорошо, садитесь, спасибо. Может, вы знали об этом эксперименте, но это такая иллюзия, да. Просто такое заключение небольшое, что иногда наши глаза нам, как сказать, врут, да. Я просто не могу хорошо выражаться по-русски. Как будто наши глаза нам врут. И поэтому важно, чтобы мы перед тем, как делали какое-то заключение, чтобы мы подумали, промыслили все и тогда делали заключение. Вот. Часто мы в духовном мире даже не сможем сделать правильное заключение без Бога. Только Дух Святой нам может сказать, что есть правильно, а что неправильно. Да? Вот в этом ракурсе я хочу сказать сегодня свое слово. Когда мы, братья и сестры, друг на друга смотрим, иногда видим то, что с одной стороны нам кажется, а на самом деле оно другое, и мы начинаем судить друг друга. Я об этом хочу сегодня говорить. Но я буду говорить по-английски, sorry. Вот. Так что, when you're ready. You're pretty much familiar with the Sermon on the Mount. This is a very famous sermon. I'm going to give you a little summary. So the jewel of the Sermon on the Mount is the Beatitudes. Okay, I got to slow down. The Beatitudes. They're very famous Beatitudes, and that's like the summary of a Christian life. It's a summary of a Christian heart, right? Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven, right? Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Those who are meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are the pure in heart, they will see God. The peacemakers, the persecuted for the righteousness, for my name, right? And then Jesus is quoted saying the Sermon on the Mountain, many other important aspects of life. Like we are the salt, we're the light. Seek first the kingdom of heaven. Don't worry what to put on, what to eat, what to drink, what to wear, because seek first the kingdom, and all these things will be given to you. Right. Also, heap up treasures not on earth, but in heaven. For where your heart is, for where your treasures are, your heart will always be. Right. Eventually, within the Sermon on the Mountain, Jesus comes to a topic of judgment. He says, "Do not judge." I'm going to read this verse, 2 verses, Matthew 7, 1 and 2. Матфея 7, 1 и 2. Do not judge, or you will be judged. For in the same way you judge others, you will be judged. And with the same measure you use, it will be measured to you. The reason I said that the judgment is wrapped in the context of the Sermon on the Mount is because a person who has a meek heart, a person who has a pure heart, who mourns, right, like cries, a person who is poor in spirit, doesn't have a heart of judging others. A person like that is just doesn't judge others. They're in a different zone, in a different mode. Okay, so that's why it's important to, when it comes to judgment, to think about the Sermon on the Mount, because this is its context. This is where it was born. There is a mirror passage. Mirror passage means it's talking about the same thing, but by a different person. In this case, Luke 7:37, Luke 6:37, 38. Лука 6 глава, 37, 38 стихи. In here, this passage goes beyond judgment. It goes into forgiveness and into giving. Okay, so instead of judging in return, we forgive, but we also give. Watch this. Judge not, and you will not be judged. Condemn not, and you will not be condemned. Forgive, and you'll be forgiven. Give, and it'll be given to you. Good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over, will be put in your laps. For with the measure you use, it'll be measured back to you. This measure is what I'd like to talk about today. Broken measure. It's in light of interpersonal or relational difficulties. Okay, it's among us. When members, of a same church condemn other members of the same church, and condemn, the definition is to sentence to a particular punishment, right? Typically, the way we judge is with our mouth. We say, "Oh, you dumb," or "You don't understand." So this is condemning. This is the wrong type of judgment. Our measure, the measure, like I just mentioned, like we read from the Bible, has a big spectrum, right? If somebody says something wrong to us, and we know they're wrong, we can either respond with judgment, we can forgive them, which is the good way about it, or we can, in fact, in response, we can give them and give them abundantly, which is the best response. I'm going to leave the best response and the good response aside and focus on the bad response when we judge in response, okay? Okay, so in James 4:11 and 12, there's a good summary of this. Яков 4:11 и 12. Do not speak evil against one another, brothers. The one who speaks against a brother or judges his brother speaks evil against the law and judges the law. But if you judge the law, you are not a doer of the law, but a judge. There's only one lawgiver and judge, he who is able to save and to destroy. But who are you to judge your neighbor? I know that some of you who know the Bible think to yourself that, well, I can have discernment. I can discern if somebody is wrong. Yes, there's what's called the righteous judgment. Okay, that's when we quote the Bible, we use the Word of God in the right circumstance, the right time, and in the right place. But when we don't do that, and we choose to condemn others, we reap consequence. There's a simple law of physics, like gravity, that if we go against, we reap consequence. So there's the law of sowing and reaping, or cause and effect in the Bible. They're simple. I call them the laws of the kingdom of heaven. Okay, they're laws like what you sow is what you reap. Sowing and reaping, asking, receiving. Accepting a righteous person and receiving a righteous person's reward. Judging, being judged. Why do we often fall for this mistake of judging other people? I believe it's simply because God had created us in His image. God is a judge, so we tend to judge others. We do it wrongly oftentimes. He does it right because He is the judge. Just think about it, how important it is to use our mouth correctly. We are created in His image, unlike the animals. Animals can make sounds. Parrots can be taught to say funny words. But we can use this organ, right, very effectively. We can, let's compare it to our hand. With my hand, I can move something. I can lift something heavy, put it over here. With my tongue, I can't really do it. But I can do more than that. Look what John says. James in 3:5, Yaakov 3:5. Soul of the tongue is a small part of the body, yet it boasts of great things. See how great a forest is set aflame by such a small fire. In other words, my tongue is like a flame, and this flame can set the entire forest to flames, right? That's how much I can do with my words. I can destroy the entire community with my bad words, or I can edify, right? Build or edify. So today, I'm going to concentrate on some aspects of judging each other that pertain to us, to our church. And I hope nobody's going to throw a shoe at me or a rock. Well, we have no rock. So speaking of shoes, number one. So I'm going to say 4 points. Okay, number one. And I'll go quick. First one is going to be long, but I'm going to go quick through the rest of them. So number one is before we respond to somebody who accuses us of something, before we respond to somebody who judges us and draws a conclusion, we need to first walk their walk. We need to first understand where they come from. Why are they saying such bad words to me? Why don't they like me? Why do they hate me so much? Okay, so we need to empathize, sympathize, and see their perspective. Look at this illustration. If you can, Petya, высвети link of a figure. There's a geometric figure there. Yep. This is just a figure. It's a geometric figure. And if you look at it from the top, right, what do you see? A circle. And I'm sure you've seen this before. This is just a friendly reminder. If you look at this figure from here, what do you see? A square. If you look at it from here, what do you see? Triangle. This is a simple illustration of perspective. Now, somebody had, a person, maybe a smart person, had cut that out, that geometrical figure, okay? But how about humans? God created humans. They're so much more complex than that figure. How many more perspectives do we have as humans from each side of us, okay? Many more perspectives. There are complexities about us beyond what we know. Because whatever God creates, He creates so beautiful, so original, and endless. For our human limited minds, we're not going to reach it until maybe we reach heaven. Let's, as an example, take something simpler than human being, than human body. Let's take construction. I'm in construction, so I know a little bit about construction, right? But I won't dare to say that I know everything about your house. I can't even say I know everything about my house, even though I've built 90% of it. I still can't say I know everything about construction. Biology. I bet you no biologist, no smartest biologist in life can say that they know everything about biology. Okay? I heard this one preacher say that they're leaf scientists. People who study leaves, I think it's like a science of leafology or photomorphology. People study leaves for years, okay? Let alone humans, let alone, for instance, our brain. This is beyond the scientific community and beyond our imaginations. Okay? Our brains can be different kinds. We can be technical, we can be creative, we can have a good IQ or a good EQ, which, if you know what this means, some of us can solve problems. They can look at a situation, problematic situation, they solve problems. Others can understand and manage emotions, and those people are good business people. And this is just diversity in our minds. Okay, there's people who think deep, people who think wide. Okay, I remember at Professor's Dan Willard's funeral, his son, Robert Willard, some of you were there, was reading some of his research papers. And I was sitting there and thinking to myself, I wonder who understands what he's reading. I happen to understand a little bit because I study computer science. So I know what he means when he talks about algorithms in patterns in mathematical equations, in sorting and searching algorithms. But I wonder who among us knows anything what he's doing. This is an example of deep science, okay? This is not for common folks. We don't use it in life. But scientists like Professor Willard, he had to, he was very good at it. He was a very deep thinker, okay? Beyond our minds and beyond our originality, which were created by God, we have different backgrounds. Look at our church as a whole. I bet you any American church would be envy of our diversity. I mean, most of us here were born in a different country. We weren't even born here. So, and some of us, like my kids, they don't know anything else. They were born here. This is their place, okay? So those people who were, let's say, who came here at the years of 40 or 60, they will never be able to get used to this culture as much as my kids, or even me, who came here at 16, right? Even the language is a barrier. So these diversities create complications, right? And we have to be aware of these complications. Somebody with different culture, different background may seem not biblical, they may seem strange, or they may seem stupid. Just because they have a different background does not mean they're not biblical. It's just a thing I'm bringing out because this pertains to us, to this church, because we're so eclectic and different. Beyond our differences, there's circumstance. We're all living through different circumstance, and some of us will reach the same circumstance later on in life. We have single people here in this room. We've got married people. We've got people who have a lot of kids, people who have not too many kids. We have people who are like a stay-home mom. We got people who run a business. We have poor and rich and old and young. I'm going to tell you one story. It happened to me about 10 years ago, right there. I was sitting where Pastor is sitting right there. And this was Sunday. And I'm waiting for the service to start. And a person comes over and sits about 2 seats over. And I see them, and I'm happy that I see them for a while. And I say, I'm so happy I see you. You're like a guest in our church. They did not like that comment. They thought I was offending them. In fact, they stood up, and they said to me something along the lines. They said in Russian. They say something, you little sucker. You telling me I'm a guest in this church? I was here before you were here. This is an example. This is a bad example. Okay, I'm bringing up a bad example of how to judge people. Right? That's not how we should judge others. In fact, what Proverbs 25 says this. Притчи 25:11. Like apples of gold in setting of silver is a word spoken in right circumstance. Like apples of gold in setting of silver. Word spoken in right circumstance. So it is so valuable, it is so precious to use the right words in the right circumstance. I'm going to give you a simple example like this. If I go up on the street and I hear somebody arguing, I decide that I am so smart, I'm so wise, I have discernment. I'm going to come up to them and I'm going to listen to them for half an hour, and I decide that, you know what, this person is right and this is wrong. I'm going to choose sides and I'm going to start going against the other side. Is this going to be wise? It's not going to be wise. It's going to be like rotten eggs. It's not going to be no golden apples, okay? I need to understand the situation. I need to see the circumstance. I need to see someone else's perspective. That was point number one. It is so crucial to understand another person's perspective before I respond with judgment. Number two, and this is going to be a real quick one. My first reaction. I have to control my first reaction because my first words, my first look, my first body language can set the stage for the rest of the argument. James 1:11 says this. Know this, my beloved brothers, let every person be quick to hear, slow to speak, slow to anger. We have a choice to smile back as our first reaction, even when we disagree or dislike the person. People who were born in Russia many years ago and came here as adults, they grew up tough lives. They went through some tough stuff, and they smile less, if you notice. To me, they smile very little. As I mentioned to you earlier, I came here, I was 16, and I was also like that, But then I start smiling. Look, your facial expression is as important as your body language, and is as important as your words. When you go like this, okay, or like this is like, it carries a lot of information. It is very important to control your facial expression. Sometimes the people of this world are an example to us to learn from them. They smile. The neighbors smile at each other. They may hate each other. They're ready to stab each other in the back, but they smile. How you doing? I'm good. How you doing? This is an example to us. We need to learn to smile back, even if we're offended, if we don't like, or if somebody hates us, or if we hate them. Proverbs 16:24. Proverbs 16:24. Gracious words are like honeycomb, sweetness to the soul, and health to the body. So the first point was to walk the other person's shoes before we condemn them. The second point was to be aware of your first response. Your first reaction sets the stage. Number three is approach. Let's say somebody's wrong. They said something real bad to you, and you know that for sure. It is my job to correct them correctly. The right approach. Okay, so now we're going to talk about communication 101. Look, Proverbs 18:21. Proverbs 18:21 says, death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it will eat its fruits. In other words, we must learn to control our tongue, okay? Because we'll eat its fruits, really bad sour fruits or gold apples, okay? The truth can be said in the right way or in the wrong way. We can say the truth, but we can say it in the wrong way, okay? I'm going to give you an example. Let's say my wife talks too much at home. I can say it as it is. I can say, you talk too much. Or I can say it as it can be. One preacher and pastor says that you got to say it as it can be instead of as it is. And instead of telling my wife you talk too much, what I can say, for example, is when you talk more precise, then I have more ability to listen to you. When you talk less, I can hear better. Okay? There is such thing as the sandwich approach. This is pretty basic communication 101 in America. I'm not sure how it is in other countries, but the sandwich, it's a very known sandwich approach in communications. When you have an argument, you're managing, and there's a tough situation, you've got to use the sandwich effect. A sandwich effect is a burger, right, that has a bread bun on the bottom, soft. Then there's a few layers, there's meat, and then there's top bread bun. So they're soft on top and bottom, and there's meat in the center, okay? For example, my wife talks too much at home. How do I approach that with the sandwich effect? I first obviously come up with, something soft, some sort of a compliment. And I say, you can use such lavish words, such nice words. I I can learn from your words because she talks too much. She uses many of them, right? And then you say it the way you can be. You say, but if you were to be more precise, I'd have more attention. Okay? And then you top it off with a compliment. By the way, your hair is really beautiful today, or something like that. Okay? This is simple, but you know your wife better and you know how to approach it, so long as you know the concept. So approach is very important. And 4, last one, is timing. Okay, so if we first understand where the person is coming from, we have examined the situation. We're not rushing. We sympathize with them. We walk their shoes. And then we control our reaction. We don't jump in the fire, and without thinking what we need to say, we say it out loud. We control our first reaction. Then we have the right approach. We correct them correctly using communication 101. Right? Everything is under control. And lastly is timing. We got to do it at the right time. Time is in God's hands. Timing belongs to God, not us. He knows when it's the right time to correct somebody, to say something or not to say anything at all. Okay, look at this, Proverbs 18:21. No, excuse me, timing. Ecclesiastes 3:7. Ecclesiastes 3:7. Ecclesiastes 3:10. A time to tear apart, a time to saw together, a time to be silent, and a time to speak. Right here in this passage in Ecclesiastes 3, he lists like maybe 15, 20 things. Time for this, time for that, time for this, time for that. And one of them is time to be silent and time to speak. Okay? The way I care for the person who is arguing with me, if I truly care for them, then the way I do it is I express patience. I am patient with my response to them. Okay? I ask God, is this the time for me to say something? Even if I'm right, even if I use the right approach, I still need to ask God when to tell him what I need to tell him. Okay, those are the 4 points. Now, there are triggers to arguments, 2 main triggers. And we should all know about this kind of stuff. Politics and religion are 2 main triggers that cause arguments among people. Companies have a rule that employees should not talk about politics or religion on the premises. You know why? Because people start arguing. Do you know why people argue about politics and religion? In my opinion, number 1 is this is information based on interpretation. Information based on interpretation. In other words, it's based on someone's opinion. There's way more opinion in religion and politics than facts and information. Take religion as an example. Religious leaders, like popes and pastors and priests, they interpret the Bible to their congregation, like we do it every Sunday. I interpret how I see God to you now. Okay, and people do this over years, over decades, over centuries, and that's how religions are born. I hope you don't think of yourself so much that you can just enter a room full of religious people and shatter everybody's argument that was built for centuries. Even Jesus himself wasn't able to break the stone hearts of Pharisees. He was very harsh with them. He wasn't able to break their hearts. Okay, so this is a religion. Now let's take politics. What is politics? Politics is news media interpreting political laws to us. Okay, interpretation of the news media. This is opinions. I hope we all understand that most politics is done behind the scenes. Like, we don't know about it. By the time we know about it, if it's important, it's already plugged in, it's ticking, it's working. Okay, it's too late. And let's look at what Jesus did in terms of politics. Did he comment on any of that? If you remember, during the days Jesus walked on earth, there were Romans a Roman yoke over the Jews, right? We know how Romans crucified Jesus Christ. And from history we know how harsh Roman soldiers, and the entire empire all. They used scare tactics. It was fear, dominance, and all that. And look, Jesus did not comment on this at all in his entire preaching. I pulled out one example here. It was John the Baptist. He accused Herod of marrying his brother's wife. This is like as far as political as they went. John accused Herod of marrying his brother's wife. This is not even a political move. This is totally, has not to do with politics. By the way, this caused John the Baptist to die, of course, but that's beyond the point. So, the simple conclusion about religion and politics is not all of us should become politicians or political bloggers. But in the conclusion of my talk today, I'd like to say this. We need to clearly understand that we have one common enemy. This common enemy wants to put us aside in different camps. But the enemy is one, the devil, okay? He is highly interested in, offense, in hate and division. That's his job. He's highly interested. We all have him as a common enemy. But if anybody does get offended or offends us, then church would be probably the best place for that. This is where brothers and sisters learn to live God's way, not the enemy way. This is the best place to learn to be offended, learn to react to it correctly. And this is our family. This is where we get used to working with people, dealing with people. Look at what Ecclesiastes 7:21-22 says. Ecclesiastes 7:21-22. Do not pay attention to every word people say, or you may hear your servant cursing you. For you know in your heart that many times you yourself have cursed others. In this place, we have a chance to learn to develop, thick skin. I hope this is translatable into Russian. Thick skin is when we ignore the offense, ignore the comments. We get used to bad words our way and not exercise snowflakes like in this world people do. In this church, we can learn to agree to disagree. This is the best place to do it. Even disagree about the Bible interpretation, because like I earlier mentioned, God is in control of timing. Eventually, we'll understand the Bible better, and we'll understand everything else better in God's timing. In this place, we can learn to understand that we don't have to spread our opinion and let everybody know of our own opinion, because this is just our opinion, right? In this place, after all, is where we learn, like I started my sermon, to be poor in the heart, to be hungry and thirsty for righteousness, to be peacemakers after all, and not, troublemakers. Here, we can learn to respond correctly. And instead of condemning our brother and judging our brother or sister, we can, use our measure correctly further. We can forgive them and go even further and keep them. Amen. Let's stand up and pray. God, thank you, Jesus, for this morning, for all these beautiful people here, for everybody who was sharing, who shared what they have experienced this weekend or throughout this week. Thank you so much for all this encouragement. I pray that we can take this home, take whatever we learn, not just as a temporary flashing thing that comes into one ear and comes out of the other, but we can apply this in life. When things get hard, when emotions or physically difficult or emotionally difficult or morally difficult situations arise, we can learn to rely on you. We can remember everything that we hear here at church and use it in life. I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.